welcome to the Liz Earle Wellbeing Show. I am Liz Earle and I'm speaking with the leading experts and familiar faces from the world of wellbeing to bring you wellness wisdom you can trust. From fitness to gut health, mood to menopause, you will quickly learn how to spot a gem of wellness wisdom from a passing fad. Now, here in the studios, I have just been joined by a legend, a woman who has been at the very top of the British food scene for over 30 years. Yes, Prue Leith CBE is a chef, novelist, restaurateur, TV chef, food critic and broadcaster. She's had a truly extraordinary career, and we cover that in the episode, from early life in South Africa to earning her Michelin star, bursting onto our screens as a judge on the well-loved Great British Bake Off, and being the new czar of hospital food. Yeah, so much to talk about. And I really loved hearing her thoughts on why she thinks being a head chef at a hospital should be far more prestigious than head chef at a Michelin star restaurant. It stands to reason when you think about it. Well, we had a truly fascinating chat about her life, about her moderate approach to healthy eating, and her fabulous new vegetarian cookbook, which is just called The Vegetarian Kitchen. And it was such a pleasure, actually, to chat to Prue, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the whole episode. So do leave a comment over on Instagram after you have heard the show. And of course, these days, you might like to watch it. And don't forget, you can watch it now. You can watch the whole chat in full with the video podcasts over on the Liz Earle Wellbeing YouTube channel. So let's go and get right into the whole episode. So Prue, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you. Thank you. So much to talk about. And you have done so many different things.
I've lived a very long time. That's why I've had lots of time to do it all.
Well, you are looking very good on it. Your early childhood was spent in South Africa. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Your mother was a famous actress.
Yeah, she was. She was a very famous actress. But I thought I'd be an actress, but then I found I was useless at it. So I gave that up, and I tried various other things. And then in the end, I fell into food. And
how did you fall into food?
I was in France at university at the Sorbonne. And you can't live in France for 2 years without getting interested in food. I mean, you'd have to have dead taste buds to do that. And so I thought, I could really do this. And so that's what I did.
So you learnt food in France? Was that your early skills?
I came to London and went to the Cordon Bleu. I did want to go to the Cordon Bleu in Paris, but I didn't have enough money. And I could live for free with some friends in London. Yeah. So I came to London.
Because that was very much that kind of era of dinner party cooking. Everyone talked about Cordon Bleu as being the ultimate of recipes and things. And from there, did you then set up Leith's, the catering?
Straight away. I mean,
did you?
It was just called, it wasn't called anything. I think I called it Leith's Good Food at that point. Yes, I just started going around doing people's dinner parties all over London. And then that grew into, people would ask me to do their son's 21st or a wedding or something, and it just grew. And when I sold it, we had 500 people working in that company. So
gosh,
it had grown quite
And you
big.
set up the school alongside that?
Yes, about, quite a long time afterwards. I opened the restaurant in 1969, which was, 8 years after I'd started catering. And then I opened my restaurant. And then in 1974, I opened the school, mainly because I wanted to have students to put into the school and into the catering company, because I was getting sort of fed up with the rather pretentious way catering students at the time cooked. They spent hours carving turnips into chrysanthemums and making radishes into roses.
I went to catering college.
Yeah, well,
so,
you will know all about you can turn a mushroom.
I can turn a mushroom, and we did spend a lot of time. I remember my first days of doing silver service, using a spoon and fork to pass potatoes between each other. And Westminster back
quite a
in
useful
the day.
skill.
Well, it's something that I can do, definitely.
Especially when you're queuing up at a buffet, it's really useful to have that skill.
To be able to do it one-handed.
Because you've got your plate in one hand and you can do it one hand and everybody else is struggling.
Yeah. And that idea of training, is that where you kind of developed a love for education and passing on knowledge?
No, I think it was when I had the catering company and we would have these young people come in, and I just felt they hadn't been taught anything about food. They had been taught the technique of how to cook, including how to turn a mushroom.
Yeah.
But they didn't love food. They didn't know where it came from. They didn't have any real enthusiasm for it. But the young women who came from posh schools like the Cordon Bleu, they were much better at they cared about food and they wanted to learn about food. And that was because they were there because they wanted to be. Yeah. Whereas a lot of the young, especially the boys from catering colleges, were there because their careers officers had said things like, "You're too stupid for the army, you better be a cook." Right. You know, it was a very low status thing.
Yes, and very different from now.
Yeah, in fact, I think it stayed low status until Jamie Oliver came along and told us all it was cool to cook.
Yeah, especially for the guys.
Yeah, for the guys.
And of course, was it the restaurant that you had the Michelin star for?
Yeah, but I didn't get it. You know, I wasn't cooking in the restaurant. I mean, I sometimes did, but I wasn't the chef.
Yeah.
We had a wonderful Scots chef called Alex Floyd. He got us the Michelin star.
Fantastic. And now you're working with schools trying to raise the standard of food in hospitals and institutions.
Yes, I mean, I'm very keen on the government not wasting taxpayers' money on junk. I don't think it's right that our money should go into rubbish food. Yeah. But what I'm doing at the moment, and we're about to report, is I'm helping the Hospital Food Review report on what's wrong with hospital food. And it's been absolutely fascinating. Yeah. And one of the things surprised me because you get so much press about how bad food is. But I went into a hospital a couple of weeks ago. The food was as good as anybody could cook. It was absolutely excellent. And we tasted every single one of their dishes, and they had all been frozen. You know, people think, frozen food. Frozen food's fine if what you put into the freezer is good. Yes. And they had a lot of, curried dals and spicy, vegetarian spicy pies and all sorts of homely food, but it was all really healthy and delicious.
It must be a lottery, though, because I had a friend who was visiting her teenage son who was in hospital, and she said it was absolutely shocking, recovering from acute infection. And it was, I think he had, chips with garlic bread and some sort of anonymous other bit of carb followed by a donut. And you just think, where's the veg? Where are the nutrients that are going to get you well?
Exactly. And I was at a meeting last night by an organisation called Culinary Medicine, which is trying to teach doctors and medics generally about food. Because, if doctors only prescribed good food, and exercise, obviously, which I'm sure they do, but if you've only got 9 minutes to do an appointment, it's much easier to give somebody a pill. Sure. And they'll go away sort of satisfied. Whereas it takes quite a long time to sit down and talk to people about their diet and so on. But anyhow, our idea is to enthuse doctors and medics generally about the benefits of food as medicine.
Food as medicine.
And I think this report will have a lot to say about that, and also about just that, it's underinvested. The fact is that we have got some hospitals that have had kitchens that haven't been touched for 40 years, and the chefs haven't been trained, and they don't have a very nice life. And, sometimes hospital staff are on night shift and they're doing a 11-hour shift or something, and they're expected to eat out of a vending machine which only sells cold junk.
That is the thing. How can we get the vending machines out of hospitals? Because they are just delivering crisps and packets of
Well, I think we need standards about what should be in anything. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a vending machine if what's in it is good.
Yeah, it's what you put in it.
I think the thing that the lesson that I've learned is it's not necessarily the delivery system. It can be. I mean, I don't think it's sustainable and good for the environment if we're buying, if we're cooking in some deep factory in Wales, and the food is actually coming from China or Thailand or somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's travelling all over the place.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that food is sometimes made in a factory doesn't mean that, or in a hub, central.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. That doesn't make it bad at all.
It doesn't make it bad.
No.
I mean, after all, our best Waitrose and their food comes from a factory.
Yes.
And there's not too many complaints about that.
Yeah, no, it's using the right ingredients.
M&S
Absolutely. But do you think that are you hopeful that we'll see change in?
I'm sure we will. I'm absolutely.
Do you think
I wouldn't
the
be
government
there? I honestly would not be there if I wasn't pretty sure we'll see change. Because I didn't want to do it, because I thought this is just another one of those efforts that will get a bit of publicity.
Yes.
Some minister will be grinning away and getting a few more votes, and then they will forget about it, or the report will be shelved and get dusty on a shelf.
Yeah.
So I did say I wouldn't do it, and then Matt Hancock, the Secretary of State, rang me up and said, and he really persuaded me that he's hanging his hat on reform of the NHS, and he wants to do the thing right. And we would have been reporting quite soon.
Yes.
But I think, first of all, we were held back by the election because we couldn't get into any hospitals during the PERDA, when they won't speak to anyone because it's during a election campaign. And now I don't know, but I imagine coronavirus might be taking the Secretary of State's mind off in a different direction.
But he is focused on the food and the food provision in hospitals.
He is. He's very keen on it. And
good.
I've seen him 2 or 3 times, and I will again next week. So,
well, when you see him, will you also remind him about the HRT shortage for women, because that is massive. And I know there's been a lot of chat, certainly on my social media channels, about that.
Yes.
And what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Are you a fan
of HRT?
Yeah.
Dead right I am.
Oh, brilliant. Good. Sorry, I just threw that at you without even asking.
No, of course I am. I mean, if you lack calcium, you do something about it. If you lack hormones,
I am so with you. So with you. And there needs to be much more education. And actually, while I'm on my soapbox, GPs are not being trained. You talk about lack of training in food and culinary knowledge, but they have no menopause training either. So it's absolutely shocking.
They don't recognise menopause.
No, they don't. And we're all living so much longer.
They give people antidepressants and things that'll fix it,
And of course it won't. Yeah. Well, it just numbs you. It doesn't actually replace the estrogen in your brain.
It just makes you want to go to sleep.
Well, I'm glad you're fueled on estrogen, because I am too. And I couldn't survive without it, without the activity. And you're doing so much. So we've talked about hospitals. We've talked about your TV work, obviously, is legendary. Your background. Your new book is all about vegetarian cookery. Is that a new thing for you? Have you always been a fan of plant-based?
No, I've always liked vegetarian food. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm a great fan of particularly offal.
I love offal, and in fact, I didn't get into trouble, but I was quite controversial during January. Instead of doing veganuary, there was organuary, which was all about the promotion of eating organ meats. This whole thing of nose to tail eating.
Exactly, really good idea.
And it's very nutritious.
Well, actually, I think both of those ideas are good, because I think I'm in favour of everybody eating as they want to eat, as long as it's healthy, and you can have a very good vegan diet. Yep. You might have to sort of stoke up on the calcium a bit, make sure that you get enough leafy greens and all that stuff.
Yes, and B12, etc.
And the same with people worry about vegetarians not getting enough protein, but they can if they eat chickpeas and things. Yeah. So but this book is not aimed at committed vegetarians, because they will already have dozens of vegetarian cooking. This is very simple family cooking that my niece and I have done. Over that, she's been a vegetarian all her life.
Has she?
Yeah, she was the head pastry chef at the Ivy, and she worked there for 8 years. So she's very good at pastry and bread and so forth. But she's also a great family cook. I mean, that's hers: black bean chili with corn and lime salsa, and it's delicious.
It looks delicious. I love the recipe for the paneer curry.
Paneer curry is fantastic. That is actually my favourite recipe.
Is it really? Okay.
I did it I've just been around South Africa, and I did it for 80 journalists. We did little, black bowls.
Nice.
And it was amazing, because they weren't vegetarians. I mean, South Africans are not like Kenyans.
No,
they
no.
like their meat,
Yes, they do. It's
and
all
they
on the
all
bride, isn't it?
absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
So it's a great recipe. I think the reason it works so well is because the spinach and the peas go in at the end, and they lighten it.
Yes.
And makes the colour look so good. And
yeah.
a bit of lemon juice always helps with the curry.
Excellent. Are you into gut health? Are you looking at probiotics and prebiotics?
I'm not into. I get a bit nervous when there's far too much about clean gut and purges and stuff like that. I just think nature can cope. Just put the right food into you.
Yes.
And so I don't like too much talk of. I don't want to frighten people. You know, if every single time they pick up something, somebody tells them, oh, the papain will do this, or that thing is full of, that's bad. You know, it just makes people nervous. And I think our relationship with food is often a bit neurotic.
Yes.
We think that there are lots, you know, we worry a lot about obesity, but we should worry also about anorexia and...
Yeah. Having a healthy relationship with food.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too much worrying about what's going on inside is unhealthy. I think we should just, we know what's good for us. We all know what's good for us. Yeah. Basically, it's exercise and healthy food.
Yes, healthy diets. Although we've lost that so much, haven't we, with schools, you know, with taking all the domestic science kitchens out of schools.
That's criminal.
Isn't it?
Actually, the last government did some good in the sense that they said, right, it's now the law that children must be taught to cook. Good.
How, though, if there are no kitchens?
You just answered it. Up to the age of 15, this was supposed to happen. But if there are no kitchens and there are no food teachers and there's no money came with that announcement, just the announcement. So, I mean, nobody's done it. And anyhow, Ofsted don't inspect it, and there's no penalties for not doing it. So it just did not happen.
No.
But there are some good things going on in schools. Do you know what Henry Dimbleby does? He's got
yes,
he has Chefs in Schools.
Ah, yes.
And he was the guy who started Leon.
Leon, it's a great chain.
It's a
chain,
great
isn't it?
chain.
It's a really good chain.
He's really keen on healthy food, and proper food for children eating the same food as grown-ups. Mm-hmm. And he now persuades chefs who are tired of the stress and the anxiety of working in a restaurant to come and work in schools. And they love it because they teach the children and they sit with the children, they teach them about food and so on. And it's mostly primary schools so far, but he's got into a lot of schools and it's making a huge difference. And there are 2 vegetarian schools, which I'm very impressed with. I went to see the one in Sheffield, and they do a vegetarian meal every day and everybody eats the same meal. And it's a secondary school, and they managed to do this. And they give them breakfast and then lunch and then a snack in the afternoon. And all for £2.80, which is about what most schools would charge just for lunch.
That is incredible value.
And the reason they can do it is because it's all vegetarian.
Yes.
Because, chickpeas don't cost a lot.
No.
And, cabbages are a hell of a lot cheaper than bacon.
And, of course, so nutritious. And, looking at some of your recipes, so delicious and inventive. And, of course, if they want to eat meat or whatever, they can do that in the evening. Or,
exactly. They're saying they're giving them one really healthy meal a day. In fact, they give breakfast as well because they're in quite a deprived area. And so many of the children arrive not having had anything to eat for breakfast. Yeah. So, and then there's one in Oxford as well, which I haven't seen. But all is a secondary school. So it can be done. I get very cross when people say these things can't be done.
Yes.
It is being done.
Well, you're not the kind of woman to say, no, it can't to, really, I can imagine. I always think that when people say no, it's just, or when there's a problem, it's an opportunity, isn't it? Of course it can be done. It's just finding the key or the way to do it.
Yes. It is the old, where there's a will, there's a way. But I think for a lot of schools, if the head teacher is not himself or herself interested in food and enjoys food, they are not going to make it a top priority. Yeah. But if they think food is important for children, they will move heaven and earth to get that right. And it's the same with hospitals. If the head of the hospital trust or the head of the care home or hospital or mental home doesn't care
Yes.
nothing will happen. So you have to always get to the boss. I'm hoping Matt Hancock is enough of a boss.
Good. Well, we'll keep the pressure on, and I'm sure you will, for sure.
Yeah.
Talking about hospitals and care homes, do you work with care homes as well? Is that an area?
I have in my life done some work for care homes. But I do think that one of the things about care homes is they work much better if they're quite small, and that where it's mostly women in care homes because they tend to live longer than men. And I've talked to so many of them who just would love to be able to show the little Lithuanian girl who looks after them, or the Polish nurse, or the cook who comes from, somewhere or other. What they ate is what they could like to cook.
Yes.
I'd love to show her
Put
how
them
to
in
make
the kitchens.
Yes, or let them at least. They're often too old to actually do the whole thing, but to be able to just teach somebody else how to make ginger biscuits, or or shepherd's pie, or
traditional favourites,
and to do something that they enjoyed doing when they were, running a family and at home. Cooking can be so much more than just feeding, can't it? It's not just nutrition.
You're so right, and this whole sociability and the whole concept of getting families to eat together, the fact that very few families now actually even have a dining table, let alone sit around one.
And that social thing about dining is so important. I'm sorry to keep coming back to hospitals, but one of the things that we noticed is how much generally happier patients were where they could get out of bed and sit in a social area. Because a lot of patients don't need to be in bed all the time. They're just in bed because it's a convenient place to park them. And what they need is at least once a day or twice a day to be able to talk to other people. It's difficult to talk to somebody in a bed.
Yes, you're not even looking at them. You're having to.
Yes, and the pillow's in the way, and all this kit is in the way. So you're quite lonely.
Yes.
But if you can meet them at lunchtime and chat, and of course it's good for them to move.
Yeah.
So.
Is that all going to be part of your plan then?
Yes,
not just the food, but the how to eat and the where to eat,
and where the food comes from, and the training of the cooks, because very often obviously not all hospitals do much cooking on the site, but wherever they are, whether they're cooking in a factory, they need to have the skills.
Yeah.
So that whatever goes into either the freezer or straight onto the customer's plate. They have to be well trained, and they have to have, I don't know how we do this, but I just think the prestige of cooking in a hospital is not what it should be. It's to be blunt about it, it's far more important than cooking in a Michelin-star restaurant.
Yes.
Michelin-star restaurant goes around like a movie star.
Yeah.
The head chef of a hospital restaurant.
Trust. Yeah.
He's right down the pecking order, and it's quite wrong.
Yeah. Saving lives. What I am quite keen on also is the idea of getting more fermented foods on the menu.
Yeah, exactly.
And even things like making yogurt, which is so simple and so good. Why we buy it in these plastic little pots?
I know.
When you can make it overnight for it's cheap as chips and so easy.
And it's easy to do.
Yeah.
But also, at least let's get real yogurt and plain yogurt, not stuffed full of sugar. Yeah. And in some hospitals, not many, I'm glad to say, but they actually don't allow yogurt because it contains a bacillus, which is a bug, and therefore
it's a good bug.
Which is just crazy. It's just got into some kind of. It's like the.
Oh.
Well, I'll give you another one. In a lot of hospitals won't allow toast to be made on the ward because they say it's a fire hazard. There are more dangerous machines than a toaster in a hospital, I promise you. And of course it's nonsense. And then if health and safety says you can't have toaster, they just obey instead of saying let's do a risk assessment. We will discover that no hospital has ever burnt down because the toaster went on fire. And lots of hospitals do it, so it's possible to do it.
Yes.
I mean, toast is the biggest complaint in hospitals, that people complain that there is no toast.
There is no
or
toast.
The toast, if it is, it's been made in the basement and kept in a wrapped up in a towel or something,
So it's
it's all flabby, or it hasn't been toasted properly. I mean, toast, for goodness sake, toast quite easy to make.
Every ward have a little
toaster.
A toaster. Yeah,
of course.
indeed. The other area that I would love to see food improvement, I don't know whether you've got any experience of this or insight, is in prisons.
Yeah.
Because we know that food has such an impact on mood.
Yeah, don't we just? And that evidence has been around for years. There's another very good charity called the Institute for Brain and Behaviour, and it's all about the effect food, brain and behaviour, and it's all about the effect of food on the brain. And so it would be all that stuff about fish oils for development of the brain and growing brain, but also about too much fat and sugar and carbs making prisoners violent.
Yes.
And there's huge evidence that, and it's been done, the studies have been going on for many, many years, and in both prisons and young offenders units, and 2 studies in Holland, and also in toddler groups. And if those people are in a healthy diet, or those toddlers or those young offenders, their violent behaviour drops by about 30%. So to drop violence by 30% in prisons, every prison, wouldn't it be the most obvious thing to do?
Yeah.
However, to make prison food healthy is quite a huge problem, like hospitals. But in a way, at least it could be done. It could definitely be done, but it would cost money, because what prisoners as a group, if you can lump them all together, which is ridiculous, but if you did, really like carbs and sweet things and junk, and there'd probably be a riot
Yes.
But some prisons have very good food.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's the old thing. How do you get everybody to do it?
Yes. I think it's a cultural thing as well, and it's, I think, what we're growing up with, and there is a huge pressure from industry and from the food processing and food industry, the ultra-processed foods.
I often find myself in trouble for saying this, but the enemy is the manufacturer. And if I worked for Mars Bars, I would be busy giving you a great speech right now about how great a Mars bar is. And of course it is, but not eaten every day. And so I think manufacturers are driven by sales, and the sales are driven by this idea that we have to have 10% growth year on year, and everything has to grow and be more and more of it. And I can see that from an economic point of view, but I don't know how you resist it, because governments won't resist the big manufacturers because their tax comes from it.
Yes, yes.
But, how can... when I was chairman of the School Food Trust, I think we had about £7 million a year to deal with. Well, probably one single chocolate bar for 1 week's marketing budget is bigger than that.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't fight, at least you can, but it's often not very effective. The only thing is to change the public's minds. Mm-hmm. And I think that's happening with all this move towards vegetarian and vegan food. And
I think so, although there's still an awful lot of food processing that goes on with that.
Especially for vegan food. There's some vegan snacks that you shouldn't touch.
It's always worth reading the label, isn't it?
It's worth reading the label.
And trying not to.
But anyway, to come back to this, I know... I'm sure there are lots of excellent vegetarian books about, but I think this is particularly for people who think, veggie food, I can't do that. It's got too many ingredients, or it takes too long, or it's complicated. No, it's not. Yeah. It really is a very homely, simple, comforting. And there are lots of luxury things in here. We haven't, there's chocolate cake and stuff you'd expect. And some of it's vegan. There's a chocolate mousse in here that's vegan.
Oh, tell me how you make that.
It's silken tofu chocolate, and a lot of triple sec, which doesn't half make, like booze, basically good booze. And it's quite smooth. It isn't moussey in this sense, because it has no egg yolks in it, egg whites in it, so it's not sort of bubbly. It's just very smooth and lovely. And I was on a radio program the other day. Can't remember his name. God, he's just the most famous person in the world. Chris Evans.
Oh yes.
So I'm on Chris Evans' program, And in walks Bob Geldof, and Cordeline were playing, all four of them, wonderful songs. And Bob picked up the 2 spoons out of the chocolate mousse and started playing the spoons
with your chocolate mousse spoons
on his knee. And he played absolutely beautifully.
Did he?
Yes, I mean, he really can do it. And so there he was playing the spoons, and it went on for a very long time. And nobody liked to say, until finally I just took the spoon away from him and gave him a clean one, because he was spraying chocolate mousse all over his trousers.
I tried a vegan recipe the other day using chickpea water.
Oh, to make meringue.
To make meringues. Bit of an odd taste.
Yeah, I don't like it. I think it's too much trouble. It takes ages to
It does
whisk.
get them to whisk up.
It doesn't whisk up like egg whisk. Even in a machine, you're waiting forever.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't make the right... It's not nice and crisp on top when it's cooked. It's like sort of raw meringue.
Yes.
I don't think much. It's too much trouble.
Yeah.
But it's quite clever to have discovered that
it is. Who knew?
Chickpea water.
Yes.
And I believe the man who discovered that you could whisk it up into a foam is and called it aquafaba.
Aquafaba, yes.
Bean water.
Yes.
Has patented the name.
No.
Or tried to. I don't know. Quite clever. But I don't. Frankly, I think the thing about vegan and vegetarian food, it worries me when people try to imitate meat or imitate something else. Why not just do what it does best?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want a burger that tastes like meat if I'm a vegetarian.
Yes.
But actually, I love meat, so I probably wouldn't mind.
Now, before we finish up, I just want to touch on something that I know is really important to you and that I think is fascinating because we don't really talk about it enough. And that's the fact that you're a patron of the Dignity in Dying charity.
Yeah.
So having talked about sustenance and food all the way through the different phases of our lives, from school onwards, care homes and then hospitals, etc. Why Dignity in Dying? What was that?
Well, my brother had a really painful, miserable death. He had bone cancer, and he was given morphine every 3 hours. He could have morphine every 4 hours, but the pain lasted 3 hours. So for an hour every 4 hours, he was in excruciating pain. And the long and the short of it is that doctors are so frightened of being accused of murder or mercy killing by nurses from Prue Leith or one of those organisations, which is really worried about doctors being too, they're anti-abortion and anti any killing or any dying, forced dying, and so doctors will not prescribe anything that's likely to. Even illegally, they're perfectly able to give you enough morphine to suppress the pain.
Yes.
And if that happens to send you off a week early or 2 weeks early or something, it doesn't matter. But if somebody reports them and says that it was deliberately killing, they are suspended for 6 months. And of course, no doctor wants that.
No.
So consultants don't prescribe enough. Some of them don't prescribe enough morphine to relieve the pain. And recently, the care homes body has admitted that even in a palliative care, lovely environment when they're trying to make the death as good as possible, there are some pains, bone cancer is one, that really even morphine doesn't get to. And they would like, and 84% of the country would like to choose whether they can kill themselves or be put to death, if you like. If you're dying anyway and you've only got at the most 3 months to live, and we know that 3 months to live is going to be agony, you wouldn't do it to a dog. No. You wouldn't force somebody to stay alive.
No.
So I'm really key. Anyway, we're.
So is that the aim of Dignity in Dying?
Is to allow people to choose pain-free death only for people who are terminally ill and who have only got 3 months to live.
Right, that's
and
the
you've
cut-off.
got 2 doctors who say that, it would still be quite a bureaucratic process to get permission to do it, because of course the fear, people are frightened that the greedy relatives will sort of force their parents to take this option. But what's happening at the moment is that if you can afford it, you go to about 300 people a year go to Dignitas, and it costs them £10,000 to go. It's not a pleasant experience.
No.
If you're ill and dying, you don't want to have to go and travel halfway across Europe.
No, to some strange clinic.
That's awful. So, and then a whole lot more people take their own lives at home.
Yes.
And if they do that, and their wife helps them, they can be prosecuted for murder.
Gosh, this is
we need to look at the law.
I'm not saying we should. Subject, isn't it?
It is a complex subject, but at least what we need is the government to have an inquiry, and look into what is actually happening in hospitals and care homes, and just get to the truth of the matter, and then maybe legislate.
Yeah. Well, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you about so much. We've covered beginning of life, end of life.
No, but I look like I'm a complete politico, just telling the whole world how to run the world. This is what you've got to do with hospitals. This is what you've got to do with prisons.
But you have lived it and breathed it, and are one of the strong voices of the people that can hopefully help make it all happen.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for coming in, and very best of luck with the vegetarian kitchen.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that is it for today's episode. As always, you will find all the links and the resources that we mentioned on today's show over on lizearlewellbeing.com. And there you can sign up for the free weekly newsletter, jam-packed with wellbeing wisdom and delicious, healthy recipes. Huge thanks to all of you who've left us such lovely reviews. It really does help others to find the show. So thank you. Until the next time, go well. Bye-bye. The Liz Earle Wellbeing Show is presented by me, Liz Earle, with production by Amaryllis Earle and Harry Trevithick at Heart Dialogue, with thanks to my producer, Ellie Smith, and the guest booker, Millie de la Morinière.